I just won my first League Cup with Charizard EX. Let's first set the scene. My time in Canada is coming to an end, and I'll be moving away soon, but it's been one hell of a year for me. I got introduced to the Pokémon TCG in late May of 2024, and have been improving steadily at the game ever since, playing Zard almost the entire time. I still remember the regret of my 2 AM $90 purchase of a bunch of cards to build a deck, and I've been running it almost my whole time playing Pokémon. From my first game, to my first tournament, to my first time making top 4. Then there was my first league challenge, which I didn't do too well in, but I did a lot better in the next one, finishing 4th and earning myself my first championship points ever. Then there was my first League Cup, and what do you know, I managed to make top cut and finished in 4th place. Then I went to my first regionals in Toronto, where I made top 512, and then went to Vancouver a few months later. But even though all this amazing stuff happened, there's still one thing I have yet to accomplish, and that's winning a League Cup. Now, I've made many top cuts before. Out of about 12 cups I've been to, I've made 4 top 4s and 1 top 2 placement. But I've never been actually able to win a cup and obtain that coveted champion playmat. But this weekend is my last double cup weekend here, and I'm so ready to lock in and win at least one of them. Today, I'm going to go through how the cup went and do a full recap of everything that happened, including my matchups, how I played, and how I eventually managed to snag myself the win. But first, here's the deck list that I played at the cup. I call it Wildcard Zard, mainly because of the fact that I'm running so many different versions of the same Pokemon and trainer cards. The truth is, I actually called it Wildcard Zard because last format, I was running so many different ways to evolve, like I was running Jacques, TM Evo, as well as Grand Tree. But now I don't have Grand Tree anymore, but I decided to keep the name anyway because of all the different art styles and different kinds of Pokemon I'm running. But yeah, it's a pretty standard list, but I do want to go over some of my spicy inclusions in the deck. So first we have Squawkabilly EX. With rotation we lost a lot of consistency cards like Rotom V and Lumineon V, as well as Forest Sealstone. But Squawkabilly helps a huge amount with consistency, allowing you to discard your hand and draw 6 cards on your first turn, which is really useful because it can help you find Puffin, Arven, Energy for TM Evo, Evolutions for next turn in case you get item locked, and like pretty much anything you need, honestly. It's an extremely useful card, and I think that every list should be running it right now if you're not playing Noctowl. But if you do run Squawk, then I think you need 4 rare candy in case you discard one, and running a Pal Pad is pretty much mandatory to recover discarded supporters like Boss, Iono, Turo, and Briar. We also have this Baby Chi-Yu, aka Radzard at Home, which is actually immensely helpful. It's a 1-prize attacker that can attack for 140 if your opponent has taken a knockout with damage on the previous turn, and it can go through Cornerstone, but most importantly, it can one-shot some pretty prevalent Pokemon in the format, like Teal'c Gogapon and Goldengo EX, which was very relevant in this cup as you'll see later. You can also use the Chi-Yu to set up damage on bigger threats like Dragapult for your Zard to follow up on, since 140 damage is quite substantial when combined with Zard or even Dusknoir. Finally, you might be wondering why there's so many different kinds of Charmander and Charmeleon. Well, first of all, I just think they're kinda cute, and I like having multiple types of them. But they can also be useful in many situations. For example, we got the normal Charmander and Charmeleon, the latter of which is immune to Phantom Dive's counters, as well as TM Devolution. But we also have an Ember Charmander, a Heat Tackle Charmander, and a Combustion Charmeleon. Heat Tackle is mainly for Bidoof, same thing with Combustion, and Ember can one-shot a Bidoof that has a Bravery Charm on it, which did come up in the second cup that weekend, not in the one that we're going to talk about today. Plus, all these attacks go through walls like Mimikyu, Milotic, and Cornerstone Ogerpon. And finally for our A-Spec we're running Unfair Stamp, which I think is a pretty great card, and it's really good in this list for some insane disruption. We're only running 2 Iono, so having a third in the form of Unfair Stamp is pretty good as well. But aside from that, everything else in the list is pretty standard, so I just sleeved it up and took it to the cup, ready to take home the gold. So I pull up to the store, not by car of course, I've just been walking for like 45 minutes total, and taking the bus for another half an hour. I'm committed to being here, and I'm not about to lose, I told myself. First thing I noticed is that the cup isn't actually full, even though the pre-registration was, so it's going to be a best of 1 Swiss into a best of 3 top 4 cut, instead of a top 8 like people were expecting. Honestly, that could be half good and half bad for my cause. A top 8 cut would be easier to get into, with a record of 3-1-1 being guaranteed into cut, whereas now only a 4-1 record would be safe, and even then someone could bubble out. However, if I hit bad matchups, a top 8 cut would be harder to win out, and seeing the sheer amount of Dragapult there was in the room, my chances would be slim. Slimmer than they already were, actually. I swear there were like 6 or 7 people on Dragapult. But you know what? I don't care. I'm still gonna lock in. Round 1 starts and I'm up against a Dragapult. Well. This guy was pretty nice and he was new to the TCG, but unfortunately he didn't really get a chance to play the game because he bricked real bad. In fact, had I top decked an energy, I could have just won the game on the spot by using Heat Tackle to knock out his Bidoof. But yeah, unfortunately he wasn't able to set up a Pult in time and I managed to take the win. Now, I hate best of 1 as much as the next guy, but sometimes it does work in my favour, so I can't really complain this time. Round 2 and I'm up against my friend Andrew playing Raging Bolt Noctowl. His list was an interesting one. It was running the baby Raging Bolt as a prevalent attacker, as well as 1 Crispin and an energy switch to power it up, along with the 4 usual starters. Because of its attack doing multiples of 30, I had to specifically bench 2 70 HP Charmander, as well as 2 Pidgey in case one of them got knocked out. And this ended up being the right call, because he had the attack next turn, and I was able to set up Pidgeot and continue the game since I had that backup Pidgey. I attack with Chi-Yu a lot, starting with the Teal Mask Ogerpon and then getting the Raging Bolt with Zard, eventually winning me the game. Round 3 and I'm up against Charizard Noctowl. Before the game, my opponent and I were talking about how different kinds of Zard lists could be made in this format, and I was telling him about how much I dislike the Noctowl engine because it's hard to find a Terra Pokemon to activate it, and how a turn 1 Iono can completely destroy your setup. And that's exactly what happened this game. Even though he only searched for 1 Noctowl just in case he got Iono'd, my Iono bricked his hand so bad that it made it so that he had nothing to do but pass his turn, which gave me more than enough time to set up Pidgeot and Zard, and then boss up his Fez for my first 2 prizes. Except that it didn't knock out since he didn't take any prizes, and I was doing 180 instead of the 210 I needed. Ouch. Misplays like this genuinely affect my mental state for the rest of the tournament, especially when the misplay ends up costing me a game. Luckily, however, this one didn't cost me the game, because since I was down on prizes, I managed to countercatcher his Pidgeot and KO it with Dusclops into Zard after Ionoing him down to 3. And then, after that, I just did a Dusknoir Briar play to take the game. Round 4, I'm up against Drew playing Goldengo, and this game was awful. I misplayed so much this game, it's not even funny. I remember at the start, I had to discard double Zard using Squawk, just because I had absolutely nothing to work with. And then later that turn, I got a second Charmander from Artisan instead of Cleffa, and then I benchlocked myself. And Cleffa would have been super useful here, since I only had 2 cards in hand, and I could have used Grasping Draw to get a whole 5 new cards. But nope, I decided to just throw it all away and get the second Charmander. Eventually, I got a hold of myself and continued the game, attacking with Chi-Yu many times to one-shot his Goldengo, and I almost managed to take the game, but unfortunately, I was never able to find Boss the whole game, and he was able to get the win by first attacking my Squawk with Scizor, and then getting the superior energy retrievals he needed to finish off my last Zard. The other annoying thing is that I've dodged an actual Dragapult game until now, and right before our game, Drew played against another Dragapult player and won, making him the only other 3-0 in the room and hence my only possible opponent. But after that round, now my only opponents are on Dragapult, so there's no way I can avoid it. Round 5 begins, and I'm up against a pure Pult deck, running Genesect instead of Munkidori. Neither of us are in the best position at the start, and I think I still have an Iono that I want to hold until I truly need it. He decides to attach a Defiance Band to his Genesect to prevent me from using my A-Spec, even though he didn't know that I was playing Unfair Stamp. Eventually, he found that the Defiance Band would have been useful to take out my Pidgeot, so that must have been annoying. Once he sets up a Dragapult, I end up ignoring it and going for his 2 Dracloaks instead, using a Dusknoir to take out one of them. After that, I attack with Zard and then have a benched Chi-Yu with energy on it to finish off the Pult if he kills my Zard, so he ends up scooping the game. And with a record of 4-1, I managed to move on to top cut. One deck check later, and I'm back at the stream table for top 4, and I'm about to rematch Drew's Goldengo. This time, I won't misplay like our previous game, I told myself. I've been given a second chance to win, and I'm sure as hell gonna take it. Game 1, I lose the coin flip and have to go first, but luckily all he could do is use Dunsparce's Find a Friend attack, which unfortunately goes to hand and not to bench, meaning I could just use Jacques to find Zard, evolve using Rare Candy, and knock out his only Pokemon to take Game 1. Game 2, I start with a double Poffin and grab Charmander, Pidgey, Duskull, and a Cleffa, but unfortunately I don't have any energy to retreat my active Charmander in order to use Cleffa. I also have a Fez in hand, but I can't draw any cards at all unless I either top deck an energy or he gets a KO. After passing my turn twice, only taking one KO with Dusknoir to try and maybe get a useful card, Drew knocks out my bench Charmeleon, allowing me to bench Fez and play Unfair Stamp, which gets me Arven and Ultra Ball, allowing me to get Rare Candy and Pidgeot EX. However, I'm still unable to attack, so I just bench Chi-Yu and use Grasping Draw for 5. When I finally evolve to Zard, I find that I've prized like 3 energy, which is kind of annoying, so I just attach to Chi-Yu and knock out his Goldengo. He then responds by knocking out my Chi-Yu with a 1 prize Scizor. I later boss up his Fez and knock it out, hindering his draw power, but unfortunately he's still able to get enough superior energy retrievals to knock out my Zard and take his last 2 prizes. Game 3 I choose to go second, which helps a lot. I pull off TM Evo for Pidgeotto and Charmeleon, and then next turn I Dusknoir his active Scyther, and then Dusclops the Goldengo he promotes, finishing off with Zard, leaving him with just 1 Goldengo. Later that turn he uses Cypher Maniac to get 2 cards on top of his deck for next turn, but after he KOs my Zard, I use Unfair Stamp to reshuffle those cards back into his deck, making it harder for him to find the cards he needs. Next turn he ends up being only 1 superior energy retrieval short from the final knockout he needs, and I end up winning the game and moving on to the finals. Alright, now it's time for the penultimate round of the tournament, and I'm about to face probably the best player on the island, Trevor Reed. And he's playing pure Dragapult with Monkey Dory. This should be a pretty bad matchup for me, but I'm not giving up that easily. I've come so far today, and it's almost the end. Within the next hour, the champion of this cup will be decided, and as much as I want it to be me, I can't shake off the thought in the back of my mind that this is probably the end of the line for me. After all, I'm playing a bad matchup against one of the best players around. Maybe Trevor was right, maybe the highest honor I could receive at this cup was to lose to him in the finals. But you all know how this ends. Somehow, after a really intense game 1, constantly playing around a TM Devolution that he didn't actually run in his deck, learning that he prized his Holucha which he needed to win the game, and after him getting really bad draws in game 2 while I kept targeting his Dracloaks, I eventually managed to win the game, the set, and the cup. As of right now, I don't have the champion playmat because the store hasn't received it yet, but it will be coming in soon, and I heard that it's got End Zoroark on it, which is pretty cool. But aside from that, I got a bunch of prize packs as well as 180 Canadian dollars of store credit, which is honestly way more than I know what to do with at this point. But most importantly, I was finally able to win a League Cup after an amazing year-long Pokemon journey. But I'm not stopping anytime soon. Wherever I'll be in the future, I'm going to keep playing Pokemon and keep winning tournaments, and I'll definitely be making more videos about my future events. But until then, it's been a great ride, and I'm very thankful for all the friends and memories I've made here over the last year. From my first game, to my first regionals, to my first cup win, I've never been happier, and I intend to keep it going for as long as possible. So with that said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.